She laughed at me, at Christmas dinner, surrounded by family. The daughter I devoted my entire life to treated me like a disposable joke. You know that feeling, when humiliation sinks into your bones, and silence is your only shield. But that night, something changed inside me, quietly, yet profoundly. I stood up and walked away, and quietly canceled the college fund she thought was untouchable. Now, before I reveal how this quiet act of dignity changed everything, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on the next emotional truths and powerful stories we share here. You might think cutting off my own daughter's future was harsh, but dignity isn't negotiable. Love without respect is a burden no one deserves. I needed her to understand, deeply, truly, that every action has consequences, and sometimes silence speaks louder than words. So grab your tea, get comfortable, and let me share with you how I turned humiliation into justice, not with anger or loud words, but with the quiet strength of a woman who refused to be erased. Christmas used to be my favorite time of the year. I would spend days preparing the dishes she loved, polishing the old silverware passed down from my mother, and lighting candles that smelled like cinnamon and childhood. That night, everything looked perfect on the outside. Sparkling lights, a full table, laughter echoing through the house. But something felt off. It was in the way they didn't meet my eyes, like I was just there, present, but not seen. And then she said it, half laughing, half sneering. "Grandma's just here for the leftovers and pity, right?" The table froze for a moment, but no one said a word. They chuckled nervously, like it was just a joke. But I felt it, like a knife carefully placed between my ribs. My own daughter, the girl I used to rock to sleep, mocking me in front of everyone. And she didn't even blink. I tried to smile. I really did. But something in me cracked, quietly, without noise, like old porcelain finally giving into pressure. I looked around and realized no one was going to defend me. Not her husband, not my other daughter, not even the grandkids. They just kept eating, chatting, sipping their wine. That's when I knew I didn't belong at that table anymore. Not like this. I pushed the peas on my plate without tasting a bite. My fingers trembled, but I kept them steady around the fork. I didn't want to make a scene, not on Christmas. But inside me something shifted, the way you shift weight before standing up. I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't cry, but I would remember. Because no matter how old you are, there's nothing quite like being humiliated by someone you gave your life to. It didn't happen all at once. At first, she'd call me for advice, recipes, childcare, even love troubles. I felt needed. I felt useful. But slowly, the calls stopped coming. The visits shortened. My birthday became a text message with a recycled emoji. I told myself she was busy, that life was just hectic. But deep down, I knew I was fading from her world. One day I heard her whisper on the phone, thinking I couldn't hear. She just doesn't know when to leave things alone. That hurt more than I admitted, because I had spent years tiptoeing, staying quiet, not interfering. I thought that was what being a good mother meant, giving space, not asking for too much. But in the silence I gave her, she built a version of me that didn't matter anymore. Suddenly I was in the way. My opinions were outdated. My traditions mocked. "Nobody uses paper calendars anymore, Mom," she once laughed, rolling her eyes. I smiled, but that smile cost me something. Each comment chipped away at me. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because love, real love, doesn't walk away when it gets inconvenient. Or so I believed. It's strange how quickly you become furniture in someone's life. Useful, but never really seen. I noticed it in little things. How they set one less plate when I was running late. How they stopped asking if I needed a ride. How my favorite tea disappeared from the cupboard. These weren't accidents. They were messages. Quiet, sharp messages. And I was finally starting to hear them. I've always been the quiet one. The kind of woman who bites her tongue, folds her pain into laundry piles, and keeps the peace no matter the cost. My husband used to say I had a heart made of patience, But patience doesn't mean absence of pain. It just means the wound stays hidden a little longer. And that Christmas laugh, hers, ripped the bandage clean off. I remembered birthdays I organized, sick days I nursed her through, dreams I shelved so she could chase hers. But none of that mattered, apparently. One careless laugh, and it all vanished. And I realized something then. Silence can turn into scar tissue. It builds up slowly, until you can't even recognize where it began. I thought I was being strong. Turns out I was just disappearing. It's what we mothers do, right? We disappear for them. We make ourselves small so they can grow. But no one tells you what to do when they grow into someone who doesn't see you at all. That dinner table wasn't just a room full of food and chatter. It was a courtroom, and I was being tried without defense, judged, mocked, and sentenced without a word. So I sat there, aching in places no doctor could find. I smiled through the burn in my throat. I nodded, played along, passed the gravy. But something inside me had changed forever. And once a woman learns the price of swallowing her voice, she starts craving silence for a different reason, one that heals instead of hides. I didn't make a scene. No plate slammed, no napkin thrown, just a slow, steady breath and the quiet scrape of my chair on the hardwood floor. No one noticed at first. They were too busy laughing, passing dessert, pouring wine. But I noticed, and for the first time in years, I put myself first. My dignity wasn't loud, but it was alive. I picked up my coat as if I were simply cold, slipped my purse over my shoulder like I always did. But my heart was carrying a storm, not of anger, but of clarity. Every step I took away from that table was a declaration. I am not disposable. I walked out not because I was weak, but because I finally remembered I was whole. She didn't call after me, not even a glance. That part stung more than I expected, but pain has a way of teaching you what love never said. And in that moment I understood. She wasn't going to change for me, so I would have to change for me. I walked down those steps like a woman walking out of a burning house, with nothing left to salvage but her name. Outside, the air bit cold against my face, but I welcomed it. It reminded me I was still alive, that I could still choose myself. And inside my bag, next to my old lipstick and peppermint gum, was a folder. A quiet little folder with documents she never bothered to ask about. She thought I was just some old woman in her way. She forgot I was the architect of everything she stood on. In my purse was a folder no one knew about, not even her. Inside were the bank statements, the college fund documents, the shared accounts, all in my name. Every dollar tucked away from years of sacrifice, every insurance policy I kept paid while skipping new shoes or birthday cake. She assumed it was hers. But assumption is not the same as gratitude. I used to smile when she called it her fund. She'd say things like, "When I graduate, I'll buy you a beach house, Mom." Sweet words from a girl who never once asked how that money got there. She didn't know about the double shifts, the meals I skipped, or the coat I wore until the sleeves frayed. She saw the fruit, but never looked for the roots. Funny how people treat you like background noise, yet count on your silence to finance their lives. That folder wasn't revenge, it was reminder. A quiet symbol that even invisible hands still hold power. She thought I was powerless because I didn't shout, but real power whispers, and my whisper came in the form of a bank transfer I never made. I looked at those papers, held them in my hands, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control, not over her life, but over mine. That money was supposed to be for her future, but I suddenly realized maybe it was meant to protect my present. And so I made a decision, not out of anger, but out of long overdue self-respect. A decision she'd never see coming. The phone started ringing before breakfast. First her number, then her husband's, then her number again. I didn't pick up. I just sat by the window sipping my tea, watching the light move across the floor. There was a peace in the stillness, an unfamiliar kind of peace. Not because things were okay, but because I wasn't pretending anymore. By mid-morning, the messages changed. "Where are you?" turned into, What did you do? And then, why is my account empty? That's when I knew she'd finally looked. She had finally noticed what I carried all along. Not just money, but power. Not loud or dramatic, but rooted. And now, she had to sit with a silence she never expected. I didn't answer, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. Words would have turned it into a fight, and I wasn't looking for that. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reflection, letting her sit in the echo of her own actions, because sometimes the loudest lesson we teach is the one we never speak aloud. I turned off the ringer, pulled out an old book, lit a candle with the scent of vanilla and old memories, and as I curled up under my favorite quilt, I realized something simple yet powerful. Silence isn't emptiness. Sometimes, silence is full of answers. And that day, I let the silence speak for me. She always loved to say she'd pull me out of that small life one day. I smiled when she said it. Not because I believed her, but because I believed in her. What she didn't see were the nights I stayed up sewing patches into her jeans, the mornings I skipped breakfast so she could have lunch at school, the birthdays I spent alone so she could go on trips with friends. All of it, forgotten. I remember one winter when I worked 2 shifts in a row, came home with swollen feet, and still braided her hair for school the next day. She never asked where the tuition money came from. She assumed it was just there. As if love automatically refilled bank accounts, as if I didn't bleed for every opportunity she was handed. But memories like that don't live in her mind, they live in mine. And while she danced through life thinking she was self-made, I stood quietly in the background, carrying her victories like my own, until that Christmas, when she laughed like I was a joke. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just forgetting the past, she was rewriting it without me in it. I wasn't bitter. I was heartbroken, not because she failed to thank me, but because she chose to erase me. You expect the world to forget you, not your own child. And yet, here I was, watching her become someone I no longer recognized. That hurt deeper than any insult. But sometimes, the greatest clarity comes through the deepest pain. People think when you take something back, you're being spiteful. But this wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting me. I had given everything. Time, money, dreams, love. And in return, I got laughter at my expense. So I took a step back. Not to hurt her, but to finally see myself clearly. Sometimes, self-respect looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like a canceled deposit. I didn't feel powerful. I felt clean, like I had finally washed off years of being overlooked. Love had made me generous, but it had also made me blind. I gave and gave and gave, until I couldn't even tell where she ended. And I began. But that folder in my purse, that decision I made, it was the first thing I'd done just for me in decades. She thought she had time. That money would always be there. That I would always be there. And maybe I would have been, if she hadn't turned me into a punchline. That laugh at Christmas wasn't just a mistake. It was a mirror. And what I saw in it broke me. Not because I was weak, but because I realized I had been strong in all the wrong ways. So no, I didn't do it out of anger. I did it out of clarity. Because loving someone doesn't mean letting them step on you. Because kindness without boundaries becomes neglect. And because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is finally let them feel the weight of what they took for granted. It was a rainy Thursday when I heard the knock. Soft, almost hesitant. I wasn't expecting anyone. Certainly not her. But when I opened the door, there she was. No makeup, no bravado, no forced smile. Just a girl, my girl, soaked in rain and swallowed by regret. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in years, I saw the child I once cradled. She didn't speak at first, just cried. I handed her a towel and watched her collapse onto the old floral couch like she was coming home from war. She said she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't believe how blind she had been. "Mom, I was awful to you," she whispered, and I nodded, not out of spite but because it was true. And hearing her say it was both a wound and a balm. We talked for hours, Or maybe we just sat in silence that said everything words couldn't. She told me how empty the house felt without me, how the kids asked where I'd gone, how her husband said nothing, just avoided the topic like it was too heavy to lift. And me? I listened, because being a mother doesn't stop when they hurt you. Sometimes that's when it starts all over again. That day I held her not as the woman who'd mocked me, but as the daughter who'd finally returned. Broken, unsure, but honest. And as I wrapped my arms around her, I felt something inside me soften. Not forget, not erase, but soften. Because love, at its core, isn't about always being right. It's about showing up when it matters most. I don't know if she'll ever fully understand what she did to me. And maybe that's okay. Some lessons aren't meant to be graded. They're meant to be lived. I'm not sure she'll ever go to college now. But life has a way of giving us the exact classroom we need. And what I gave her that night wasn't punishment. It was a syllabus for growing up. She asked if I would ever reinstate the fund. I told her gently, that money was for the girl you were. This moment is for the woman you're becoming. She cried again. Not for the lost money, but for the truth. Because somewhere deep down, she knew. This was never about tuition. It was about values that no degree could teach her. Now, when I think of legacy, I don't picture a will or a checkbook. I picture her hands trembling as she held mine. I picture the silence between us finally breaking, not with anger, but with understanding. She may not get the future she expected, but maybe, just maybe, she'll become the kind of woman who builds her own. With grace, with grit, with character. I won't live forever. None of us will. But if I can leave behind one thing, not money, not property, but wisdom, then I've done my job. And whether she remembers it tomorrow or years from now, I hope one day she'll look back and say, that was the moment I found myself. Because in the end, the best inheritance is a mother's truth. In the end, dignity isn't something anyone can buy, not even with a college fund. It's earned through actions, through respect, through the lessons only life can truly teach. I don't regret what I did, because sometimes our greatest gift to the ones we love is letting them experience the consequence of their choices. Love, after all, isn't about giving everything. It's about teaching what matters. And now, I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have chosen silence, or would you have confronted her right there at the dinner table? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love connecting with you through your stories. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and tell me where you're watching from. It warms my heart to see the incredible community we've built here, connected through these shared moments of truth and courage. Remember, every woman deserves respect, no matter her age. Sometimes the strongest messages are delivered quietly, but they echo loudest through our actions.